I believe I became a psychotherapist in order to get the skills I needed to talk to my tortured father and find out what the hell happened to him so
Hmm.
that I wouldn't become him. And I was just writing a piece for a newspaper. I am the son of a depressed, angry man. He was the son of a depressed, angry man. I have two resplendent boys. They do not say that, and their children will not say that. And that is the greatest accomplishment of my life.
Hello, friends. Welcome. It is a great delight today to be in conversation with Terry Real. He's an expert in couples therapy. He's developed a method called relational life therapy, which addresses couples problems like no other therapist I've ever encountered. Terry's the author of several best-selling books, including a new book called Us, Getting Past You and Me to Build a More Loving Relationship. And with Sounds True, he's created an audio series called Fierce Intimacy, Standing Up to One Another in Love. It's a program that our listeners report again and again is one of their favorite audio teaching series in all of Sounds True's history. In this conversation, Terry and I talk about the individualism we've inherited from our culture, and quite honestly, how it screws us up in relationships to be so individually focused, and instead, how we can learn to develop something he calls soft power, bringing together our connection along with our empowerment at the same time. So we move beyond you and me to us. Here's my conversation with Terry Real. Terry, I'm so happy to have this chance to be with you and to talk about your new book, Us, a New York Times bestseller. All right.
I'm excited.
Okay, so right here at the beginning, you're known as the relationship turnaround guy. How did you come in your career, in your work, to that role and to really focus on relationships in general as a practitioner?
It's kind of interesting, actually. Back in the 90s, I published a book called I Don't Want to Talk About It about male depression. It was the first book ever about male depression. Until that time, depression was seen as primarily a woman's disease, just like alcoholism had been seen as a man's disease. And I'm proud of my role in bringing that to the fore. There are an estimated 6 million depressed people in America, so the book did really well. And I began getting calls from not just America, but really around the world, saying, is there somebody who does this kind of work in Topeka or LA or wherever? And the calls, of course, were primarily from women. Uh, it's women who bought my book. I say that I don't want to talk about it. It appeared under pillows all over, all over the states, and these were couples in trouble. And I would refer them to a therapist as best I could. But after a while, the light bulb went off, and I said, "Look, if you're crazy enough and you have the resources, come to Boston, where I work, and be with me." And what evolved was a 2-day intervention. I called it a relationship intervention. Me and the couple, 2 days straight, face to face. At the end of those 2 days, you're either on track or getting a divorce. This was the last stop. And I learned two things. One, I had a remarkable track record. We're now just doing outcome studies. It's not formal, but honestly, I'd say 19 out of 20 couples were pulled off the ledge. They weren't. They all went home with a treatment program. You go to AA. You go to get some medication. You do meditation. You do this that. But most of them were spared divorce. And these are people that no therapist have been able to, 6, 7, 8, or 10 therapists is my record that nobody's been able to help. The second thing I noticed about these relational interventions is that I broke just about every rule I'd learned in couples therapy school.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll tell you what makes the. So I'd already been teaching family therapy at that point, and rather than have a big shame attack and figure, oh my God, I must be doing something wrong, I said, oh, I seem to be doing something right. I invited the great, a friend at that point, the great feminist psychologist Carol Gilligan, uh, assembled a group behind the one-way mirror. We did a 5-year research project. And this was sociologists, anthropologists, educators, therapists of different stripe. I would meet with a couple on the brink of divorce for 2 hours in front of the mirror. Then Carol and the team would come out from behind the mirror, and one by one, they would each talk about what they just saw me do from their perspective, anthropology, sociology, whatever. And it was really out of these conversations that my method, relational life therapy, was created. And we break a lot of rules. If I may, we take sides. Uh, when I was a couples therapist, the cardinal rule was if you took sides, particularly if you sided with the woman against the man, you had to go to your supervisor and talk about your mother for a while. You lost your
Hmm.
neutrality. But not all problems are 50-50. Uh, I remember sitting with a couple. Uh, he was an untreated, unmedicated alcoholic rager, and her quote unquote contribution, as far as I could see, is that she was there. This was the feminist critique of family therapy. Talking to an abused spouse about their contribution to the system is grotesque. So, in RLT, relational life therapy, we're perfectly capable of saying, uh, uh, Mrs. Jones, you're a nut, and Mr. Jones, you're an even bigger nut, and here's why. So we take sides. We tell the truth. We deal not just with shame. I think is one of our great contributions. We deal not just with shame, but also with grandiosity.
And this is something, Terry, I really want to talk to you about because in your new book, Us, you go into quite a bit of detail about grandiosity in relationships and the roots of grandiosity in our individual lives and the culture.
Yeah.
So let's take some time together on this.
Okay. Anyway, so I began teaching this method, and now we have a training program. If I can put it, come to my website, relationallife.com. We have a beautiful 2-year certification program, and we're training thousands of therapists around the world. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. So let's talk about grandiosity. Why and how did you start tracking it? And help us understand it in ourselves and in our relationships and in the culture. The big question here, but I think it's really important.
Um, per, I was raised by a loving, depressed, angry, violent father. I write about it. And in fact, I believe I became a psychotherapist in order to get the skills I needed to talk to my tortured father and find out what the hell happened to him so
Mm-hmm.
that I wouldn't become him. And I was just writing a piece for a newspaper. I am the son of a depressed, angry man. He was the son of a depressed, angry man. I have two resplendent boys, 32, 35. They do not say that, and their children will not say that. And that is the greatest accomplishment of my life. So
Mm-hmm.
I have been the recipient of male grandiosity and male abuse of power. And I internalized that. I was a rager early on in my life. I also internalized it as depression and shame. I attacked myself. as so many of us do. One of my insights, uh, one day I figured out that the energy of shame, which we've been focused on as a field for 50 years, helping people come up from the one down, the energy of shame and the energy of grandiosity, superiority, are not different. It's the same energy in two different directions. And the emotion is contempt. I ask people to think of it like a flashlight. When the flashlight of contempt beams out on you, oh, I can't believe that Tami, she's such an idiot, blah, blah, blah. We call that grandiosity. When the flashlight beams on me, I can't believe it can even be the same exact words. What an idiot I am. We call that shame. But it's exactly the same energy. And what I figured out and began working on first in my own life and marriage, and then with my clients and students, is how to live a contempt-free life, nonviolent. This is way before nonviolent communication, but it's akin. Nonviolent between you and others and nonviolent between your ears. So, as you know, in the book, I talk about coming out from under the great lie. And the great lie is that a human being can be essentially superior or inferior to another human being. We are equal. We are same as. We all have the same inherent worth. We all have the same value. It can't be added. It can't be subtracted from. It's an existential or spiritual fact. And our culture runs on the lie of superiority and inferiority. It absolutely infuses our day-to-day life, minute to minute, every day that we live. The,
Let me ask you a question, Terry, because as you're speaking, I'm scanning for if I want to live a contempt-free life, where would I notice contempt? How would I notice it coming up in the course of my day, of my life? And I don't think I think about contempt really as one of the, I think about like envy maybe or tearing someone down, but I don't name that contempt is underneath it. So how could I do a contempt scan on my life?
yeah, yeah. Well, I would ask our viewers to literally. I have an exercise where at the end of the day, you do a self-esteem journal, and you note when you were one up and when you were one down, and what the physical sensation is. That's the marker. Like I have the same, we all have the same physical sensation. Like when I go down, my dad used to swat me over the back of the head. And when I go down, my shoulders go up. I don't know that anybody sees it, but my body feels like I'm protecting my head and I'm looking up. Like when I go up, I literally look down my nose at people. The thing is, this is I'll tell you a story. This is how I illustrate it. Back when my kids were little, I'm at a PTO dinner, and this guy comes up to me, and the first thing I know, I haven't seen him, and the first thing I notice is he's really fit. He's really good looking, and I'm always struggling with a little pot belly, and so I look at this incredibly fit guy, and I go down into shame. I feel old and fat. Oh God, and I'm one down. I'm inferior. And then I think to myself, well, yeah, this guy looks great. He's a gym rat. He's a trust fund kid. He comes from money, and he's never had to work a day in his life, so he can be at the gym. Me, I'm a self-made man. I'm one up. And while I'm one up, looking down my nose at him, I notice I still have more hair than he does, and I'm like glorying in that. And then I think, yeah, son of a gun is rich. I'm not rich. How come I'm not rich? Why can't I be rich? So and so is rich. A lot of people I know are and I go down, one up, one down, one up, one down, inferiority, superiority, until I take a breath and I say to myself, you haven't listened to a thing this guy's been saying. Why don't you pay attention to what's in front of you? And then I bring myself down into even. The beauty of this is once you start to get aware of when you're up and when you're down. You can intervene. You don't have to stay that way. And you can take a breath and reach up and literally bring yourself back into your body, looking at your eyes, even, same as. Bring yourself up from that one down, back into even and same as. And this is a muscle that can be cultivated.